Imagine, if you will, that you are standing at the edge of a great silent courtyard. The air is cool, carrying with it the faint scent of incense and stone warmed by the sun hours before. Before you rise, walls painted in imperial vermilion, so tall and so solid that they seem to close off the world itself. Above those walls stretches a roofline tiled in golden yellow, its edges curling upward as if lifting toward the heavens. A single lantern sways lightly in the evening breeze, casting flickering shadows upon vast wooden gates reinforced with iron studs. This is no ordinary place. It is a world within a world, a fortress, a palace, and a mystery all at once. This is the Forbidden City, heart of Imperial China, where emperors lived and ruled for nearly 5 centuries. But the name itself invites wonder, forbidden. For centuries, common people were not allowed to set foot beyond these walls. Entry was restricted to those who served the emperor, to concubines, eunuchs, guards, and officials, all bound to a life of service, intrigue, and silence. Secrets lingered in every hallway, in every courtyard, and behind every carved wooden screen. What truths, then, are hidden behind the gates? What dreams and dramas played out in the shadows of those halls? What mysteries still rest, undisturbed, within its chambers? Tonight, we will walk slowly through time, guided by quiet steps, allowing the Forbidden City to whisper its secrets as we drift into history and into sleep. Standards. Let your breathing slow, your thoughts soften as we pass beneath those vermilion walls. The lanterns are lit, the marble courtyards are still, and the voices of the past are waiting for us. Close your eyes and picture the dawn of the 15th century. The Ming dynasty has risen, and its rulers, seated upon the dragon throne, seek to display power in a way the world has never seen. The Yongle emperor, ambitious and commanding, has a vision to build not just a palace, but an entire cosmic center, a city within a city from which the emperor would rule as the son of heaven. In 1406, construction began. Tens of thousands of workers, artisans, and laborers poured into the capital. They came bearing timber from distant forests, stone from mountains, and bricks fired by the millions. Each material had to meet imperial standards. Huge red pillars were cut from giant trees in the mountains of Sichuan. Marble for staircases and balustrades was quarried from Fangshan, transported with immense difficulty. Bricks, stronger than ordinary, were fired for years until the supply was ready. The project was monumental. Nearly 1 million workers are said to have been involved. The construction lasted 14 years, completing in 1420. The city that emerged was not merely an imperial residence. It was a physical embodiment of Chinese cosmology. The Forbidden City is aligned with the cardinal directions, its layout designed to mirror the harmony of the universe. The emperor's throne sat at the very center, symbolizing his role as the pivot between heaven and earth. The north-south axis runs straight through its heart, connecting halls, gates, and courtyards in perfect alignment. Meridian. Picture yourself walking along that central axis. The great Meridian Gate towers above you, the grand southern entrance. Beyond it lies the vast outer court, where ceremonies and rituals proclaimed the emperor's authority. Deeper still, one reaches the inner court, a world of quieter chambers and gardens, reserved for the emperor, his family, and his closest attendants. The walls surrounding this palace city rise more than 30 feet, stretching over 2 miles. Beyond them is a wide moat, filled with water that reflects the golden roofs like a mirror. Within, there are nearly 1,000 buildings, each one painted with vermilion walls and crowned with glazed tiles of imperial yellow, a color forbidden to all but the emperor. The very design of the Forbidden City was meant to overwhelm. To approach it was to feel small, to be reminded of the emperor's unmatched position. He was the son of heaven, and these halls were his celestial domain. Yet for all its grandeur, the Forbidden City was not simply a stage of glory. It was also a place of strict order, hierarchy, and silence. And within its walls, countless lives unfolded, often unseen by the world outside. Now imagine the palace at dawn. The sky is pale, the first light of morning glinting off golden rooftops. Already, activity stirs within the courtyards. Officials in long robes hurry to line up, awaiting the daily audience with the emperor. Guards in armor stand rigid, spears in hand, watching from the shadows of the gates. Somewhere, in the quieter quarters, the fragrance of morning tea drifts from kitchens to sleeping chambers. Life inside the Forbidden City was defined by ritual. Every hour, every gesture, every word was governed by rules. Bells rang to mark the passing of time. Servants swept the marble courtyards, polished floors, and lit lanterns. Even the emperor himself lived according to rigid routines. His day began early, often before sunrise, with reports and memorials presented by officials. The palace was divided into two realms, the outer court and the inner court. The outer court was the stage of politics, ceremony, and governance. Here, in the grand halls such as the Hall of Supreme Harmony, the emperor presided over rituals that affirmed his divine authority. Imagine the hall, its immense wooden beams carved with dragons, its throne raised upon a dais, its vast space echoing with the sound of ceremonial music. When the emperor appeared, clad in robes of imperial yellow, embroidered with 5 clawed dragons, all present bowed their heads, daring not to look upon him directly. The inner court, however, was a different world. It was here that the emperor lived as a man, with his empress, his concubines, his children, and the eunuchs who attended them. These quarters were filled with smaller halls and pavilions, gardens with winding paths, and quiet chambers where whispers carried more weight than proclamations. For the emperor's family, life could be both luxurious and suffocating. The walls of the palace were gilded, but they were also confining. The women of the palace rarely left, their lives defined by duty, hierarchy, and constant watchfulness. Every concubine vied for favor. Every gesture weighed for its potential to gain or lose influence. Eunuchs, too, played a vital role in daily life. Castrated as boys, they lived entirely within the palace, serving as attendants, messengers, and guardians of secrets. Many rose to immense power, controlling access to the emperor and manipulating court affairs. Others lived in obscurity, forgotten in the endless corridors of the palace. Even the smallest details of daily life were marked by symbolism. The colors of robes, the placement of furniture, the order of rituals all reflected Confucian ideals of order and harmony. The emperor's meals, for instance, could consist of dozens of dishes, prepared with precision and served with ceremony. Yet often, he ate little, the rest distributed among his attendants as a mark of favor. As you walk slowly, in your imagination, through these courtyards and chambers, you begin to sense how life within the Forbidden City was both majestic and constrained. It was a world of beauty, but also of control. A place where every smile might hide ambition, and every bow might conceal resentment. And yet, at night, when lanterns burned low and the courtyards fell silent, another side of the Forbidden City emerged. In the gardens, shadows stretched across moonlit paths. In quiet chambers, concubines whispered stories and lullabies. Eunuchs padded softly across stone floors, carrying secret messages or delivering tea to restless emperors. The palace, so alive by day, became a hushed world of secrets by night. It is in these moments, between the public and the private, between grandeur and silence, that the true mysteries of the Forbidden City begin to reveal themselves. To the outside world, the Emperor of China was the Son of Heaven Supreme, divine beyond reproach. His image was carved into jade, painted in scrolls, and enshrined in ritual. And yet, behind the vermilion walls of the Forbidden City, emperors were human. They were men of flesh and blood, with fears, desires, and weaknesses that history often concealed beneath layers of ceremony. Imagine the young emperor rising before dawn. He sits upon the dragon throne, receiving reports of floods, harvests, or distant rebellions. To his officials, he appears calm and commanding. But when the rituals are over, he retreats to his private chambers. There, the weight of the empire falls heavy upon him. He may be barely more than a boy, surrounded by courtiers who scheme for influence, unable to trust even the closest attendants. Some emperors were diligent, devoting themselves to governance. The Kangxi Emperor, for instance, rose early each day, studied reports, and sought to strengthen the dynasty. Others, however, became overwhelmed by the endless burden of rule. They turned instead to pleasures, distractions, or spiritual pursuits. The Wanlai Emperor of the Ming Dynasty, after years of diligent work, grew weary of court politics. He retreated from daily governance, refusing to appear at audiences for decades. Behind the walls of the Forbidden City, he lived in near seclusion, surrounded by his favored consorts and trusted eunuchs, leaving the empire adrift. Others sought solace in art, literature, or faith. The Qianlong Emperor, who reigned for much of the 18th century, filled his chambers with poetry, paintings, and calligraphy. He wandered the gardens of the palace, composing verses about nature and time, all while maintaining the aura of supreme authority. But even emperors faced danger within their own walls. Poisonings, betrayals, and plots unfolded in the very chambers that seemed most secure. At night, the emperor's guards kept watch with absolute vigilance. Even so, the silence of the Forbidden City was often pierced by fear of rebellion, fear of conspiracies, fear that trust itself was impossible. And so the emperor lived at once as the most powerful man in the world and the loneliest. Surrounded by attendants, yet often isolated, elevated to divine status, yet vulnerable to human frailty. His hidden life was a paradox, one of grandeur and one of solitude. As you wander the echoing halls in your imagination, picture the empty throne of the Hall of Supreme Harmony, bathed in pale moonlight. It is both a symbol of absolute power and a reminder of the burdens carried by those who sat upon it. Beyond the emperor's private chambers lay another world, one filled with beauty, rivalry, and whispered intrigue. This was the world of the empresses and concubines, the women of the inner court. The empress held the highest position among them. She was the mother of the nation, charged with overseeing the palace's women, performing rituals, and supporting the emperor. But even her power was precarious, for the emperor's favor determined all. Around her lived dozens, sometimes hundreds, of concubines. They were chosen for their beauty, talent, or political connections. Many came from noble families, offered to the palace as symbols of loyalty. Others were selected through elaborate ceremonies, brought into the Forbidden City as girls, never again to leave its walls. Life for these women was both luxurious and confined. They wore silk gowns embroidered with phoenixes, lived in gilded chambers, and dined from porcelain vessels. Yet they could not walk freely outside the palace. Their world was limited to courtyards, gardens, and the endless wait for the emperor's attention. A single visit from the emperor could transform a concubine's fate. To bear a son meant honor, influence, and security. But to fall out of favor meant isolation, sometimes for life. Rivalries bloomed, often hidden behind polite gestures. Poisoned tea, whispered accusations, or alliances with eunuchs could tilt the balance of fortune. Some women, however, wielded extraordinary influence. Empress Dowager Cixi, though she lived centuries later, is a powerful example. Rising from a low-ranking concubine, she bore the emperor a son, and through careful strategy, became one of the most powerful rulers in Chinese history. She governed the empire from behind the curtains, using the Forbidden City as both her prison and her throne. But for many others, life passed quietly, in waiting and longing. Some wrote poetry, their verses filled with yearning for freedom or remembrance of their families. Others cared for silkworms in palace gardens or painted delicate scenes upon silk scrolls. In their silence, their lives became whispers in history faint, but not forgotten. If you listen closely, as you drift through these imagined corridors, you might hear the faint strains of a zither, played by a concubine in a lonely chamber. You might catch the fragrance of peonies blooming in a hidden courtyard, tended by hands that once held imperial jewelry. Their stories linger, woven into the stillness of the Forbidden City, as much a part of its secrets as the golden tiles above. Of all those who lived within the Forbidden City, none embodied its paradox of service and power more than the eunuchs. Taken from their families as boys, they were castrated, often by force or necessity, and sent to serve the palace. They could never marry, never father children, never live as ordinary men. Their lives were bound entirely to the emperor and his household. At first, their role was humble attendants who cleaned, carried, or guarded. But their unique position made them indispensable. As men who could not create dynasties of their own, eunuchs were considered safe to serve among the emperor's wives and concubines. They guarded the women's quarters, delivered messages, and managed daily routines. Over time, however, some eunuchs gained immense power. They controlled access to the emperor, decided who could enter his chambers, and even influenced his decisions. To petition the emperor, officials often had to first persuade the eunuchs who stood at his side. In the Ming dynasty, powerful eunuchs like Wei Zongxian became infamous for corruption and cruelty. Wei wielded such authority that he manipulated appointments, punished enemies, and even had temples built in his honor. His downfall was swift, but his story revealed the dangers of placing too much trust in silent attendants. For many eunuchs, however, life was marked by loyalty and quiet service. Some served faithfully for decades, becoming trusted companions of emperors. They learned to read the emperor's moods, to anticipate his needs, and to guard his secrets. Imagine walking down a long, shadowed corridor at night. A eunuch passes by carrying a lantern that flickers against the vermilion walls. His footsteps echo softly on the stone floor, but his face reveals nothing. He knows secrets he can never tell the emperor's words, the empress's orders, the concubine's tears. His silence is both his burden and his power. Some eunuchs wrote memoirs, offering rare glimpses into life inside the palace. They spoke of ceremonies, punishments, and the unseen tensions that rippled through the Forbidden City. Through their eyes, we glimpse the human side of imperial life, its joys, its cruelties, its loneliness. For while the emperor sat upon a dragon throne, and the empress ruled her court of women, it was often the eunuchs who carried the whispers of power through the endless halls. They were the quiet guardians of the Forbidden City's most intimate secrets,